pause for a moment. Before you do anything else, before you scroll, before you decide whether to stay, let me ask you something quietly. What if the thing that changes your financial life is not more effort, not more praying, not even more faith, but where you place one single sentence? Most people carry cash in their wallet. Some carry cards. Some carry debt, receipts, reminders of what they don't have. But almost no one carries peace there. And yet, your wallet is one of the few objects you touch almost every single day. You open it when you feel pressure. You reach for it when you feel fear. You look inside when you're asking yourself, do I have enough? Now imagine this. Every time you open your wallet, instead of seeing lack, instead of seeing numbers that tighten your chest, you see a promise. Not a lucky charm, not superstition, a reminder. A reminder that says you are not abandoned. You are not forgotten. You are not unsupported. Tonight, I'm going to show you one scripture and one exact place to put it. And know what happens next is not magic. It's quieter than that, deeper than that. Because the first thing that changes is not your money. It's your reaction, your decisions, your nervous system, your sense of safety. And when that changes, your entire relationship with provision begins to shift. If you've ever prayed and still felt anxious about bills, if you've ever believed, yet felt like peace was always just out of reach, stay with me. Because what you're about to hear is not about asking God for more. It's about placing trust exactly where fear usually lives. Take a slow breath, and let's begin. There are things you carry every day without thinking about them. Your phone, your keys, your wallet. They feel ordinary, neutral, harmless. But nothing you carry daily is ever neutral to your subconscious mind. Your nervous system is constantly reading signals. Your brain is always asking one quiet question in the background. Am I safe, or am I at risk? And few objects answer that question more directly than your wallet. Think about it. You reach for your wallet in moments of pressure. When it's time to pay, when a bill arrives, when you're standing at a counter, waiting, hoping there's enough. Over time, your body learns something without words. Wallet equals survival. Wallet equals security. Wallet equals fear or relief. This conditioning happens silently. No one teaches it to you. It simply forms through repetition. And repetition is how the subconscious learns best. Every time you open your wallet, your mind scans it in less than a second. Not just for money, but for meaning. Enough or not enough. Safe or unsafe. In control or exposed. That reaction becomes automatic. You don't choose it anymore. Your body does it for you. This is why so many people say they believe in abundance, but tense up instantly when money is involved. It's not hypocrisy. It's conditioning. Your conscious mind may say, I trust, but your body has been trained to expect lack. And whatever your body expects, your decisions quietly follow. This is the part most people miss. Money problems are rarely just about money. They're about the state you enter when money is involved. When fear shows up, your breath shortens. Your thinking narrows. You rush. You avoid. you delay, or you overreact. Small choices made in fear compound over time, not because you're careless, but because fear is expensive. Now here's where something subtle but powerful begins to shift. Your wallet is not just a container. It's a trigger point, a doorway your subconscious walks through again and again. And anything placed consistently at a trigger point begins to rewrite the response. This is how habits form. This is how trauma heals. This is how safety is restored, not through force, through presence. When something calming, grounding, and trustworthy appears at the exact moment, fear usually rises. Your nervous system learns a new pattern, slowly, quietly, gently. This is why placement matters more than intention. You can believe something deeply, but if it never meets you where your fear lives, it stays theoretical. Many people keep faith in books, on shelves, on nightstands, in safe, separate spaces. But fear doesn't show up there. Fear shows up in grocery stores, at gas stations, at checkout counters, at 2 a.m., when numbers run through your mind, and especially inside your wallet. That's why what you carry matters. Not symbolically, neurologically. Your subconscious doesn't respond to lectures. It responds to repetition paired with emotion. Every time you open your wallet, there is emotion present, even if it's subtle. By placing a calm, grounding truth there, you are not trying to convince yourself of anything. You are simply giving your nervous system a different signal to read. Instead of "something is wrong," it begins to hear "I am supported." Instead of tightening, your breath softens. Instead of panic, there is pause. And in that pause, something remarkable happens. You begin to make decisions from a steadier place. Not reckless optimism, not denial, but trust. Trust doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means not letting fear decide for you. Over time, this changes everything. The way you spend, the way you save, the way you speak about money, the way you notice opportunities. None of it feels dramatic in the moment. But compound calm is powerful. This is why the first shift is invisible to others, but unmistakable to you. You feel less reactive, less rushed, less desperate. And when desperation leaves, clarity arrives. Your wallet stops being a reminder of what's missing and becomes a quiet anchor. A place where fear used to speak first, now truth does. This is not magic. It's not superstition. It's the nervous system learning safety in the exact place it learned fear. And that is where real change begins. Before money changes. Before circumstances shift. Before anything external happens, you change. And when you change, the path ahead opens differently. That is the hidden power of what you carry. Most people don't lose faith because they stop believing. They lose it because belief never reaches the moment of pressure. You can believe deeply and still panic at the checkout counter. You can pray sincerely and still feel your chest tighten when a bill arrives. You can trust in theory and freeze when numbers appear on a screen. This doesn't mean your faith is weak. It means your faith has been kept at a safe distance from real life. For many people, faith lives in quiet places. in books, in morning routines, in moments when nothing is at stake. But fear doesn't show up there. Fear shows up when something is required of you, when a decision must be made, when money must move, when responsibility becomes real. And in those moments, your body reacts faster than your beliefs. This is where the breakdown happens. You don't consciously decide to stop trusting. Your nervous system simply takes over. It has been trained through years of repetition to associate money with risk. Risk of not having enough. Risk of being exposed. Risk of losing control. So, when pressure arrives, your body does what it knows best. It protects. It tightens. It rushes. It worries. It prepares for loss. And suddenly, the calm belief you felt earlier in the day is nowhere to be found. This is not a moral failure. It's a biological response. Your subconscious mind does not respond to ideas. It responds to patterns. And most people have practiced fear around money far more often than trust. They've rehearsed it daily, opening accounts, checking balances, counting and recounting, bracing themselves before looking. Over time, the body learns a script. Money equals danger. So when you try to bring faith into that moment, it feels fragile, outmatched, disconnected, like trying to whisper in a storm. This is why faith often feels strongest when nothing is being asked of it. It's easy to trust when there's no decision to make, no bill to pay, no consequence attached. But the true test of faith is not how it feels in silence. It's whether it can stay present when fear shows up. And most people were never taught how to bridge that gap. They were taught to believe harder, pray longer, hope more. But hope without grounding can actually increase anxiety. Because hope keeps your attention on the future while fear is screaming in the present. What your nervous system needs in moments of pressure is not more information. It needs reassurance. A signal that says, I am not alone in this moment. I am supported right now. I do not need to panic. Until that signal arrives at the exact moment fear activates, faith will continue to feel inconsistent. This is why so many people feel confused. They believe, yet still worry. They trust, yet still feel unsafe. They pray, yet still brace for impact. It creates a quiet internal conflict. One part of you says, I should trust. Another part says, but what if? And the body always listens to the louder signal. Fear is loud because it's tied to survival. Faith feels quiet because it's often kept abstract. So the question becomes, how do you make faith audible at the moment fear tries to take over? Not by forcing yourself to feel calm, not by pretending you're not afraid, not by shaming yourself for worrying, but by placing reassurance directly in the path of fear. Faith doesn't fail because it's false. It fails because it arrives too late. It stays in your head while fear lives in your body. And until faith has a physical meeting point with your daily stress, it will remain theoretical. This is why separation is the real problem. Faith on one side, life on the other. Sacred on Sunday, stress on Monday. Belief in quiet moments, panic in real ones. Not because you're insincere, but because no bridge was ever built. Bridges are not ideas. They are structures. They exist in specific places to carry weight when pressure is applied. And money is one of the heaviest pressures most people carry. This is why the practice you're about to learn is not about convincing yourself of anything. It's about meeting fear where it already lives. Not arguing with it, not suppressing it, but calmly introducing a different signal at the exact moment it arises. When that happens consistently, your nervous system learns a new pattern. Fear doesn't disappear overnight, but it no longer dominates. And when fear loses dominance, faith no longer has to fight. It simply stays. This is the shift. Not louder belief, closer belief. Not stronger faith, better placement. And once faith is present where fear used to speak first, everything begins to change. Your wallet is not just an object you own. It's an object your nervous system recognizes. Long before you consciously think about money, your body already knows what your wallet represents. Access, limit, safety, risk. That's why the wallet is powerful. Not symbolically, functionally. Every time you reach for it, your subconscious opens a doorway, a gateway where belief and fear meet. This happens in seconds, often without words. You don't think, "I'm afraid." Your body simply tightens. Your breath shortens. Your shoulders rise. Your mind narrows. This is the gateway activating. The wallet is one of the few places in daily life where the abstract idea of money becomes real. Numbers turn into consequences. Beliefs turn into decisions. That's why affirmations spoken in a quiet room often disappear the moment real money is involved. They were never placed at the gateway. The subconscious doesn't respond to truth in isolation. It responds to truth at the moment of activation. And the wallet is a repeated activation point. Day after day. Transaction after transaction. This repetition makes it powerful. And whatever consistently appears at a gateway begins to define what happens next. Think about how habits work. A trigger appears. A response follows. A pattern forms. Open the wallet. Feel the fear. Brace yourself. That loop has been rehearsed hundreds, sometimes thousands of times. So the wallet becomes more than a container. It becomes a script, a silent instruction your body follows automatically. This is why changing thoughts alone rarely works. You can tell yourself, "I trust." But if the gateway still triggers fear, the old response wins. To change the response, you must change what appears at the gateway. Not once, consistently. This is where placement becomes transformational. When something calm, grounding, and trustworthy appears exactly where fear usually activates, the pattern begins to weaken. Not through force, through familiarity. Your nervous system learns by exposure. The first few times you open your wallet and see something different, nothing dramatic happens. Fear still whispers, but now, fear is no longer alone. There is a counter-signal present, a reminder that does not argue, does not shout, does not demand. It simply exists, and existence is powerful. Over time, your body begins to associate the wallet with a different internal state. Instead of immediate tension, there is a pause. Instead of panic, there is space. That pause is everything, because in that pause, choice returns. You are no longer reacting. You are responding. This is how gateways work. They don't control outcomes. They influence responses, and responses shape outcomes. This is why the wallet is such a precise location for subconscious change. You don't need to remember to practice anything. You don't need to set reminders. You don't need discipline. Life brings you to the gateway on its own. Every purchase, every payment, every moment of uncertainty. And each time, you are gently retraining your nervous system, not by forcing belief, but by allowing safety to be present. This is the part many people misunderstand. They think the power is in the words themselves, but the deeper power is in where those words live. A truth kept far from fear cannot calm it. A truth placed directly in fear's path eventually reshapes it. The wallet becomes a meeting point, a place where old conditioning meets a new signal, and slowly, the balance shifts. Fear no longer dominates. It becomes just one voice among others, and trust, once quiet and distant, begins to feel familiar, accessible, real. This is why the practice works quietly. No rituals, no performance, no emotional intensity, just placement, presence, repetition. Your subconscious doesn't need to be convinced. It needs to be shown, again and again, that safety exists even here, even in money, even in uncertainty, even in moments that used to trigger panic. Once that lesson is learned, the gateway changes function. The wallet no longer signals threat. It becomes neutral, then steady, then supportive. And from that state, decisions improve naturally. You think more clearly. You notice options you once missed. You stop sabotaging yourself out of fear. This is not optimism. It's regulation. And regulated systems perform better. This is why the first visible change is not an increase in income. It's an increase in clarity. And clarity creates momentum. The wallet, once a trigger for fear, becomes a doorway to trust. And when trust has a doorway into daily life, it no longer fades when pressure appears. It stays. That is the power of turning your wallet into a subconscious gateway. There are thousands of verses in Scripture, promises, stories, poetry, declarations. So why this one? Why place this verse in your wallet and not another? Because not every truth works the same way on the nervous system. Some verses inspire, some correct, some comfort, but only a few directly address the quiet fear most people carry around money. The fear of not having enough. The fear of being left alone to figure it out. The fear of running out. This verse speaks to that fear without demanding anything in return. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't say if you do more. It simply states a relationship and a reality. My God shall supply all your needs. Not might. Not someday. Not if circumstances improve. Shall. That word matters more than most people realize. Shall is not emotional language. It's structural language. It doesn't describe a feeling. It describes an order, and orders create stability. The nervous system calms when it hears certainty, not exaggerated certainty, not forced positivity, but grounded assurance. This verse does not promise luxury. It does not promise excess. It does not promise instant relief. It promises provision, and provision is what fear is really asking for. Not abundance fantasies, not dramatic breakthroughs. Just this quiet question, will I be taken care of? This verse answers that question directly. My God. Not a distant force, not an abstract principle, not luck, a relationship, a source, something personal. When the mind hears my, it shifts from isolation to connection. Fear thrives in isolation. Trust grows in relationship. This is why this verse is powerful at the exact point where money anxiety appears. It reminds you that you are not sourcing life alone. Then comes the word needs, not wants, not comparisons, not the pressure to keep up. Needs. The nervous system understands needs. Food, shelter, safety, stability. This verse does not shame you for having needs. It does not spiritualize scarcity. It does not suggest that needing support is a failure of faith. It acknowledges reality without surrendering to it. And that balance is rare. Many teachings either deny fear or drown in it. This verse does neither. It stands steady. And then comes the part that most people misunderstand. According to his riches, not according to your income, not according to the economy, not according to your past mistakes, according to something larger than your current situation. This matters because fear narrows perception. When fear is active, the mind scans only what it can see. Balances, deadlines, limits. This verse gently expands the frame. It doesn't tell you how provision will arrive. It doesn't give timelines. It simply shifts the source. And shifting the source is enough to calm the system. Because fear comes from believing that the burden rests entirely on you. This verse says it does not. That doesn't mean you stop acting. It means you stop panicking. And panic is what drains energy, clouds judgment, and closes doors. This is why this verse belongs in a place you see when fear tries to speak. Not to argue with fear, not to silence it, but to remind your body that it is not alone in the moment. This is also why this verse works quietly. It doesn't hype you up. It grounds you. It doesn't promise escape. It promises support. And support is what allows you to make better decisions. To pause. To think. To respond instead of react. When placed in your wallet, this verse doesn't function as a slogan. It functions as a counterweight. Each time fear pulls you toward urgency, this verse pulls you back toward steadiness. Over time, that steadiness becomes familiar, and familiarity changes identity. You begin to see yourself not as someone scrambling to survive, but as someone held, provided for, guided. This is not belief as performance. This is belief as posture. A posture that says, I am doing my part, but I am not carrying this alone. That posture changes the way you walk into stores, the way you check balances, the way you talk about money. It changes the tone of your inner voice. And the inner voice is what truly shapes experience. This is why this verse works best when it is not overanalyzed. You don't need to dissect it. You don't need to memorize it perfectly. You only need to let it be present at the moment fear usually dominates. The verse does not need you to feel confident. It only needs to be seen. Presence is enough. Over time, presence becomes belief. Belief becomes behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. Quietly. Naturally. This is why this one verse, placed in this one location, can create a shift that feels almost surprising. Not because it forces change, but because it restores trust exactly where trust was missing. Every meaningful change follows a pattern, not a formula, not a ritual, a pattern. Something is planted. Something receives it. Something grows. This is true in nature, and it is true in the inner world. The mistake most people make is assuming that belief alone creates change. Belief is powerful, yes, but belief without placement remains suspended. Like a seed never touching soil. A seed contains everything it needs to become a tree. Height, strength, fruit. But until it is placed in the right environment, nothing happens. Not because the seed is weak, but because potential needs contact. The same is true with truth. You can hold a promise in your mind. You can agree with it. You can even feel inspired by it. But if it never enters the space where fear and decision actually occur, it stays dormant. This is where the principle begins. The verse is the seed. It carries meaning, reassurance, and direction. But it cannot work from a distance. The wallet is the soil, not because it is special, but because it is active. It is touched, opened, engaged with. It is where financial reality is confronted again and again. And placement is what brings the two together. Most people place faith where it feels comfortable. On shelves, in books, in quiet corners of life. But fear doesn't show up there. Fear shows up where money moves. That is why placement matters more than intention. When a seed is placed in soil, it does not demand growth. It does not rush the process. It simply stays. And staying is what allows transformation. This principle works quietly. The seed does not announce itself. The soil does not react dramatically. Change happens below the surface first. This is where patience is misunderstood. People expect immediate results because they are watching the surface. But growth always begins underground. Roots form long before leaves appear. When you place a calming truth in the space where anxiety usually lives, your nervous system begins forming new roots. Roots of steadiness. Roots of trust. Roots of clarity. You may not feel it immediately, but something has shifted. This is why consistency matters more than emotion. You do not need to feel confident every day. You do not need to feel hopeful. The seed does not require enthusiasm. It requires presence. Each time you open your wallet and see the verse, the seed is watered, not through effort, through exposure. Your subconscious mind absorbs patterns through repetition. This is how habits are formed. This is how fear was learned. And this is how fear can be unlearned. The soil does not judge the seed. It does not ask if you deserve growth. It simply responds. This is where many people relax for the first time. They realize they do not need to convince themselves. They do not need to perform belief. They only need to place something true where something fearful used to dominate. Over time, this creates a new association. Wallet no longer equals danger. Wallet begins to equal steadiness. And steadiness changes behavior. You pause before reacting. You breathe before deciding. You think more clearly. These are small shifts. But small shifts compound. This is why the principle is gentle yet powerful. It does not force transformation. It allows it. The seed does not grow by pressure. It grows by permission. This is why rushing the process backfires. If you keep checking the soil, digging up the seed, asking, is it working yet? You interrupt what is forming. Trust requires space. Not blind trust. Not denial. Just allowing time for new roots to form. This principle also protects you from disappointment. Because you are no longer waiting for a dramatic sign. You are watching for subtle changes. Calmer reactions. Clearer thoughts. Different choices. These are the earliest signs of growth, and they are reliable. This is also why the placement must be exact. Not near the wallet, not in a bag, not somewhere you might forget. The seed must meet the soil every time the trigger appears. This is how the old pattern weakens. Fear thrives on repetition. So does trust. Whichever one is present more often becomes dominant. The wallet is a place fear visits often. By placing truth there, you are not fighting fear. You are outlasting it. And fear always loses to consistency. Eventually, the gateway changes. What once triggered tension now triggers pause. What once caused panic now invites reflection. The soil has changed. And when the soil changes, what grows changes too. This is the principle at work. Not dramatic. Not mystical. Just precise. Seed, soil, placement. When these align, growth becomes natural. And when growth becomes natural, change feels inevitable. This is how a single verse placed in a single location can begin to reshape your relationship with money. Not by forcing outcomes, but by restoring trust at the root. This practice is intentionally simple. Not because it's weak, but because complexity creates resistance. When something feels heavy, the mind postpones it. When something feels gentle, the body allows it. That is why this practice works. You do not need preparation. You do not need the right mood. You do not need discipline or motivation. You only need to do one small thing. Once, take a small piece of paper, an index card, anything that fits easily in your wallet. Write the verse by hand, slowly, without rushing. My God shall supply all my needs. You do not need perfect handwriting. You do not need decoration. This is not about appearance. It is about intention. Writing by hand matters. When you write, your nervous system slows. Your breath deepens. Your attention settles. The words pass through your body, not just your eyes. This is why typing does not have the same effect. Writing engages memory. It engages presence. Now, When you finish writing the verse, pause for a moment. You don't need to say anything dramatic. You don't need to feel anything special. Just notice your breath. Then place the paper inside your wallet. Not anywhere. Place it where your eyes naturally go first when you open it. That detail matters. The verse must meet you before fear does. Before numbers. Before cards. Before reminders of obligation. This placement is not symbolic. It is strategic. You are positioning reassurance at the exact moment your nervous system checks for safety. Once the card is placed, the practice is complete. There is nothing else you must do. No daily ritual. No repetition schedule. No performance. Life will bring you back to it naturally. Every time you open your wallet, the verse will be there. Some days you will notice it. Some days you won't. That's okay. The subconscious learns even when the conscious mind is distracted. The practice continues, whether you think about it or not. Now, there is one gentle addition. When you do notice the verse, when your eyes rest on it for a second, take one slow breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth, and silently say one sentence. I am provided for. That's it. No pleading, no asking, no bargaining. This is not a prayer for something to change. It is a statement of position. You are not trying to force belief. You are allowing your body to experience safety. This is important. The practice does not work because you convince yourself of something. It works because repetition creates familiarity. And familiarity creates calm. Calm creates clarity. Clarity creates better choices. Better choices change outcomes. This is how the shift happens. Quietly. Naturally. Some days, the verse will feel comforting. Other days, it will feel neutral. On difficult days, it might even feel irritating. That is normal. Do not analyze those reactions. Do not correct them. Just let the card stay where it is. The practice does not depend on how you feel. It depends on consistency. Consistency does not require effort when placement is correct. That is the beauty of this design. You are not adding something to your day. You are changing what meets you in a moment that already exists. Over time, something subtle begins to happen. The moment you reach for your wallet, your breath changes. Not because you force it, because your body remembers safety. You pause. That pause is the practice working. In that pause, fear no longer drives the wheel. You regain choice. You respond instead of react. This is where transformation begins. Not in dramatic declarations, but in quiet moments of regulation. This practice is not about pretending money doesn't matter. It matters. That's why this works. You are not escaping reality. You are meeting it with steadiness. There is no timeline. Some people notice changes quickly. Others notice them slowly. Both are valid. The practice does not promise speed. It supports stability. And stability is what allows growth. If you forget about the card for days, nothing breaks. If you remember it many times a day, nothing accelerates. There is no pressure. The seed grows at its own pace. Your role is simply to keep it planted. This is why this practice is sustainable. It does not demand belief. It does not demand emotion. It only asks for placement and patience. Everything else unfolds naturally. And as the practice settles into your life, you may begin to notice something unexpected. Not miracles, not sudden windfalls, but a quieter relationship with money. Less tension, less urgency, more trust in small decisions. Those changes are not small. They are foundational. They are the ground from which everything else grows. Most people expect change to arrive loudly. A notification, a deposit, a sudden solution. But real change rarely announces itself that way. It arrives quietly, so quietly that many people miss it. When you begin this practice, when the verse sits in your wallet day after day, the first thing that changes is not your circumstances. It's your reaction. At first, the change is almost unnoticeable. You reach for your wallet out of habit. Your eyes catch the verse. You breathe. That's it. No fireworks. No surge of emotion. But something subtle has happened. Your body didn't spike. The familiar tightening in your chest didn't fully take over. The rush didn't escalate as fast. That is the first shift. Fear didn't disappear, it simply lost speed. And when fear slows down, you regain something precious. Choice. Before, fear decided quickly. It pushed you to avoid, to rush, to postpone, or to overcompensate. Now, there is a pause. In that pause, you think more clearly. You read things twice. You wait before reacting. You don't spiral as easily. This is not dramatic, but it is profound. Because most costly mistakes are not made from lack of intelligence. They are made from urgency. Urgency drains wisdom. Urgency narrows vision. Urgency convinces you that there is no time to choose well. When the practice begins to work, urgency softens, and in its place, something steadier appears. Presence. You are more present when making decisions, more grounded when spending, more patient when waiting. This changes outcomes over time, not magically, practically. You stop sabotaging yourself in moments of pressure. You stop making choices just to escape discomfort. You begin to tolerate uncertainty without collapsing into panic. This is where momentum begins. Not with money, with regulation. When your nervous system feels safer, your mind becomes more resourceful. You notice options you once ignored. You hear ideas you once dismissed. You consider possibilities you once rushed past. This is not optimism. It is clarity. Clarity is what fear blocks. Fear narrows the lens. Calm widens it. This is why the first visible change is often internal. You feel less exhausted by money, less emotionally drained, less consumed by what-ifs. The mental noise quiets. That alone is a breakthrough. Because when the noise quiets, you conserve energy. And conserved energy is creative energy. You begin to show up differently. In conversations, in negotiations, in planning. Others may not notice right away, but you will. You'll notice that you are no longer bracing yourself constantly. You'll notice that your thoughts are less catastrophic. You'll notice that you stop replaying the same fears over and over. This is the nervous system relearning safety. Safety does not mean certainty. It means resilience. It means the ability to stay steady even when outcomes are not yet clear. This is the state from which better futures are built. The practice does not remove challenges. It changes how you meet them. And that difference is everything. Over time, these small internal shifts begin to influence external behavior. You delay purchases you would have made out of anxiety. You ask questions instead of assuming. You plan with patience instead of panic. These choices compound quietly. They don't look impressive in isolation, but together, they redirect your path. This is why people often say, things just started lining up. They didn't line up by accident. They lined up because you were no longer pushing from fear. Fear pushes too hard. Trust allows alignment. This is the paradox most people miss. Trying harder does not always produce better results. Sometimes, trying less produces clarity. Clarity produces alignment. Alignment produces flow. And flow produces opportunities. This is why money often follows later. Not because you attracted it, not because you demanded it, but because you became someone who could see and receive it. The internal environment changed first. The external responded afterward. This order matters. If money came before regulation, it would only amplify fear. More to lose, more to protect, more to worry about. But when regulation comes first, money becomes manageable. It becomes neutral, useful, supportive, not something that controls you. This is the quiet wisdom of the practice. It does not rush results because rushed results don't last. It builds capacity first. Capacity to hold. Capacity to decide. Capacity to trust. When capacity grows, life fills it naturally. This is why patience is not passive. It is active preparation. You are not waiting. You are stabilizing. And stabilization changes everything. If you are in the early stages of this practice and nothing external has changed yet, do not assume nothing is happening. Something is happening. Your reactions are softening. Your breath is slowing. Your mind is clearing. These are not small wins. They are the foundation. Everything meaningful is built on them. At some point, doubt will appear. Not because you are doing something wrong. Not because the practice has failed. But because doubt is what the mind does when it no longer controls the outcome. Doubt doesn't arrive as a loud voice. It arrives quietly. It sounds reasonable, logical, protective. It says things like, "This feels too simple. Nothing has changed yet. You're just comforting yourself. If this really worked, you'd see proof by now." Doubt rarely attacks your faith directly. It questions your patience. And patience is where most practices fall apart. The moment doubt shows up, many people assume it means something is wrong. But doubt is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that the old pattern is losing certainty. Fear thrives on predictability. Even painful predictability feels safer than uncertainty. Before this practice, fear knew its role. You opened your wallet. Fear appeared. Your body reacted. The loop completed. That loop was familiar. Now, something has interrupted it. Not dramatically, just enough. Fear no longer gets the first word every time. And when fear loses dominance, the mind tries to restore control. Doubt is one of the mind's favorite tools for this. It tries to pull you back into analysis, back into measuring, back into watching the surface for proof. But here is the truth most people are never told. Inner shifts always precede outer confirmation. If confirmation came first, there would be no growth, no capacity, no stability. You would collapse under what you receive. This is why doubt often appears right before integration, not breakthrough. Integration. Integration is when a new pattern settles deeply enough that you stop questioning it constantly. The mind resists this, because integration means surrendering old control strategies. Strategies like worry, like overthinking, like constant vigilance. These strategies once kept you safe. At least, they felt like they did. So when you stop using them, the mind panics. Doubt is that panic in disguise. It says, be careful. Don't trust too much. Stay alert. This is important to understand. Doubt is not your enemy. It is an old guard trying to protect you. When you see doubt this way, you don't need to fight it. You don't need to silence it. You don't need to convince it of anything. You simply let it pass. Like a cloud, you acknowledge it, and you return to the practice. Not with intensity, with calm. Because the practice was never designed to eliminate doubt. It was designed to outlast it. Fear fades when it is not fed. Doubt fades when it is not argued with. This is why over-effort backfires. When people try to push through doubt, they re-engage urgency. Urgency is fear wearing motivation's clothes. The practice does not require urgency. It requires presence. This is where many people get confused. They think, if I don't feel confident, I'm doing it wrong. But confidence is not the goal. Stability is. Confidence fluctuates. Stability remains. Some days, the verse will feel meaningful. Other days, it will feel flat. That is normal. Meaning comes and goes. Present stays. The seed does not grow faster because you feel inspired. It grows because it remains planted. Doubt often tempts you to check the soil, to look for signs, to measure progress, to open the wallet and think, is this working yet? That checking is not curiosity. It is control. And control interrupts growth. The seed does not respond to surveillance. It responds to consistency. This is why the practice asks so little of you. You are not required to feel hopeful. You are not required to believe harder. You are only asked not to remove the seed, not to uproot it with impatience. Doubt will tell you to stop quietly. It will not demand. It will suggest, you can always try something else. This doesn't really hurt. But it's not helping either. You've waited long enough. This is the most dangerous moment. Not because doubt is strong, but because it feels reasonable. This is where most people abandon the practice, right before it integrates. The practice does not promise immediate relief. It promises long-term steadiness. Steadiness takes time to become familiar. The nervous system does not trust new patterns quickly. It needs repetition. Not dozens of times. Hundreds, That repetition is happening every time you open your wallet, even when you forget about it, even when you feel neutral, even when doubt is present. This is why doubt cannot stop the practice unless you remove the seed. As long as the card stays in place, the pattern continues. This is important. You do not need to win an internal battle. You do not need to defeat doubt. You only need to not obey it. Let doubt exist. Let it question. Let it wait. You keep placing reassurance where fear used to dominate. That is enough. Over time, doubt loses energy, not because you argued it away, but because it stopped being useful. When the nervous system feels safer, doubt has nothing to protect. This is when something quiet happens. You stop thinking about the practice, not because you forgot it, but because it became normal. And normal is powerful. Normal means the new pattern has settled. This is when people suddenly realize, I haven't been spiraling as much, or I'm handling things differently. They don't remember when it changed, because integration does not announce itself. It feels like life simply became less heavy. This is the point where trust becomes embodied, not believed, not declared. Embodied. Your body knows what to do without you forcing it. This is where the real transformation happens. Not when you feel inspired, but when you no longer need to monitor yourself. Doubt no longer runs the system. It becomes background noise. And when doubt becomes background noise, clarity takes the lead. This chapter exists to tell you one thing. If doubt has shown up for you, nothing has gone wrong. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are simply at the point where the old pattern is losing relevance. Stay, not intensely, gently. Let the seed remain. Let the soil do its work. The next phase does not require effort. It requires rest. And that is exactly where we are going next. Now, there is nothing you need to do. You don't need to understand anything. You don't need to focus. You don't need to try. If your eyes are open, you can let them soften. If your eyes are closed, that's perfect too. This part is not for the thinking mind. It's for the part of you that listens quietly, especially when you rest. Let your breathing slow down. Inhale gently through your nose and exhale through your mouth. There is nowhere to go, nothing to solve, nothing to fix. Just listen. You don't need to repeat these words out loud. You don't need to agree with them. Just let them pass through you. Like water, every time you hear them, your nervous system learns something new. That it is safe to slow down. That it is safe to trust. That it is safe to let go of constant vigilance. You are not falling behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you need to be in this moment. As you rest, your body knows how to receive. Your mind does not need to work for provision. It never did. Provision does not come from tension. It does not come from fear. It does not come from overthinking. It comes from alignment. And alignment happens naturally when the body feels safe. So for now, just rest. Let the words arrive softly. I am provided for. There is no rush in this sentence. I am provided for. Let it settle. You don't need to believe it fully. You don't need to argue with it. Just let it exist. I am provided for. If thoughts appear, that's okay. You don't need to follow them. Let them drift past like clouds. Return to the sound of the words, I am provided for. Your body does not need proof to relax. It needs reassurance. And reassurance works best when it is gentle. When it is repeated without pressure, you may notice your shoulders releasing, your jaw softening, your breath deepening on its own. That is your nervous system responding. There is nothing you need to control. Everything important is already happening below the surface. I am provided for. Not someday. Not conditionally. In this moment. Even now. Even here. Even while you rest. You are allowed to stop scanning for danger. You are allowed to stop preparing for the worst. You are allowed to rest without earning it. The systems that support you do not shut down when you sleep. They continue. Quietly. Faith does not require effort. Trust does not require force. They grow best in stillness. I am provided for. Let the words slow down even more. I am provided for. Each time you hear them, they move a little deeper, out of the thinking mind into the body, out of effort into ease, out of fear into steadiness. There is nothing you need to hold tightly anymore. You can loosen your grip. Life does not need you to strain. You are supported in ways you cannot see yet, and that is okay. The unseen is not unsafe. It is simply not visible yet. Your job is not to predict. Your job is to rest. I am provided for. You do not need to rehearse tomorrow. Tomorrow will arrive with its own clarity. For now, this moment is enough. This breath is enough. This rest is enough. Your body knows how to recover when you let it. Your mind knows how to reorganize when you stop forcing it. Your life knows how to unfold when you stop resisting it. I am provided for. If sleep comes, let it come. If wakefulness remains, that is fine too. There is no wrong state here. Only gentleness. Only permission. Only ease. You do not need to monitor yourself. You do not need to check progress. Everything that needs to integrate is integrating now. Quietly. Naturally. Without effort. I am provided for. And with each repetition, that truth becomes more familiar. Not as an idea, but as a feeling of being held, a feeling of being supported, a feeling of not carrying everything alone. Stay here. Rest here. Let the words fade softly into silence when they are ready. Nothing more is required. At this point, nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be improved. Nothing needs to be fixed. What needed to shift has already begun shifting. Integration is rarely dramatic. It doesn't feel like a breakthrough. It feels like settling. Like something heavy being set down gently after being carried for a very long time. You may not notice a clear moment when it happened. There is no line to cross. No announcement. Just a quiet sense that you are no longer bracing yourself the same way. That is integration. Integration is when trust stops being an idea and becomes a posture. Not something you repeat. Not something you remind yourself of. Something your body understands. You wake up, and the day does not feel as sharp. You open your wallet, and your breath does not tighten immediately. You think about money, and the familiar spiral does not pull you in as quickly. Nothing spectacular has changed, and yet everything has softened. That softness matters, because softness is not weakness. Softness is flexibility, and flexible systems adapt better than rigid ones. When the nervous system softens, it stops scanning constantly for danger. It conserves energy, and conserved energy becomes available for creativity, for patience, for discernment. This is how trust changes your life without announcing itself. You are still responsible. You still act. You still plan. But you are no longer driven by panic. You are no longer making decisions from a place of internal emergency. That alone changes outcomes, because panic narrows time. It makes everything feel urgent, as if the future must be forced. Trust widens time. It allows sequence, and sequence is how life actually moves. One step prepares the next. You begin to notice that you are less reactive. You pause before responding. You wait before deciding. You feel your body before you move. These pauses are not hesitation. They are intelligence. They give space for clarity to appear. And clarity is often what was missing all along. This is where many people expect something external to happen. A sign, a confirmation, a visible reward. But integration does not demand proof. It creates readiness. Readiness to receive. Readiness to notice. Readiness to respond. When readiness is present, opportunities are no longer invisible. They do not need to be chased. They are recognized. This is the difference between forcing change and allowing alignment. Alignment does not feel exciting. It feels steady. It feels like being able to exhale while still moving forward. Trust is not passive. It is calm participation. You do what you can do, without punishing yourself for what is not yet clear. You stop narrating lack in your mind, not because you silence thoughts, but because those thoughts lose their urgency. They no longer control the tone of your inner world. And tone shapes experience. Over time, your internal dialogue changes. From "what if this goes wrong" to "I'll handle this when it arrives." From "I don't have enough" to "I'll see what's possible." From "I'm behind" to "I'm moving at my pace." These are not affirmations. They are signals. Signals your nervous system sends to the rest of your body and to the way you show up in the world. People respond to these signals. Conversations shift. Interactions soften. Negotiations feel less tense. Not because you are manipulating outcomes, but because you are no longer broadcasting fear. Fear repels clarity. Trust invites cooperation. This is how provision often enters life. Not as rescue, not as shock, but as response. A response to steadiness. A response to presence. A response to someone who is no longer fighting life at every turn. When resources do arrive, and they often do, in unexpected ways, you are able to receive them without gripping, without fear of loss. Because your sense of safety is no longer dependent on the amount. This is the deepest shift. Money becomes supportive, not defining, useful, not threatening. One aspect of life, not the axis around which everything spins. This is why trust must come first. Without trust, more money only amplifies anxiety. More to manage, more to protect, more to lose. With trust, money becomes quieter, and quiet systems are sustainable. At this stage, you do not need to check your progress. You do not need to evaluate whether the practice is working. The practice has already done its job by staying present. The card remains in your wallet. The signal remains available. You do not need to think about it. It will meet you when it needs to. Trust grows best when it is not watched. When it is allowed to become normal. Normal is powerful. Normal means your system no longer questions safety constantly. Normal means the new pattern has replaced the old one. This is what integration looks like. Not excitement. Stability. If challenges appear, and they will, you now meet them differently. Not with certainty, but with steadiness. You breathe. You pause. You remember that you are not alone in the moment. That memory is not loud. It does not argue. It simply grounds you. And grounding is enough to prevent collapse. You do not need to be fearless. You need to be regulated. Regulated people recover faster. They adapt. They see. They choose. This is the quiet strength you have been cultivating. Nothing more is required. You are not missing a step. You are not late. You are not doing this wrong. You are allowing trust to live where fear once dominated. And that is not a small thing. That is a fundamental change. Carry that forward gently. Not as effort. Not as belief you must maintain, but as a state you can return to whenever life tightens. Trust is not something you hold. It is something you rest into. And from that rest, life continues to unfold in its own timing. Steady, supportive, enough. If you've listened all the way to this point, then something important has already happened. Not outside of you. Inside. You didn't rush. You didn't skip ahead. You stayed. And staying is the very thing that most people never give themselves permission to do. You now understand that this was never about forcing money to appear. It was never about tricks, superstition, or chasing a miracle. It was about restoring trust in the exact place where fear used to live. Your wallet is no longer just a reminder of pressure. It is no longer just a place where anxiety waits. It has become a quiet anchor. A small, steady signal that says you are not carrying everything alone. And from that place, life responds differently. Not because you demand it, but because you are no longer resisting it. There is nothing else you need to add tonight. You don't need to repeat this practice perfectly. You don't need to monitor yourself. You don't need to look for signs. Just let the card remain where it is. Let trust remain where fear used to speak first. Everything else unfolds in its own timing. Before you rest, there is only one simple thing I invite you to do. If this message resonated with you, if something softened inside while you were listening, write one sentence in the comments: I trust. I am provided for. Not for me, for you. There is power in quietly naming your position. It anchors what you've just experienced. And if this kind of calm, grounding guidance is something you want more of, if you want content that helps you sleep, recenter, and gently reprogram the way you respond to life. Make sure you are subscribed to Sleep Success Audiobook. This channel is not about hype. It's not about pressure. It's about transformation that happens quietly, consistently, and lasts. There is another video waiting for you right now that goes even deeper into how your inner dialogue shapes your reality while you sleep. You'll see it on your screen. Let it play. There is nothing you need to do except rest and allow. Good night. You are supported.